Don't write a constitution for today. We write a constitution for posterity, for future generations.
Now, start living the document. We must make the document part of our lives. Constitutionalism is more important than a constitution.
Professor Mutambara, you have served in government, and right now there has been talk that our government has made a shift from the past, maybe from Robert Mugabe, from the GNU to something better. What is it that you see? Do you see any change, any transition from the First Republic to the GNU to the Second Republic?
There's no shift whatsoever. There's no change whatsoever. If there's any change, it's for the worse. There's no Second Republic. There's no new dispensation. Mugabe was part of a system. The system is still in place. Mnangagwa is a crude version of Mugabe on corruption, on tribalism, on incompetence. He's worse because there's no finesse. Mugabe had an element of finesse around him, but this one is very crude in terms of the naked corruption and naked incompetence. So there's no shift whatsoever. There's no Second Republic in Zimbabwe. There's no new dispensation in Zimbabwe. In fact, we've jumped from the pan into the fire on many fronts.
But this government has argued that it has strengthened the Zimbabwe Anti-Corruption Commission. It has given police its powers to arrest ministers. We have seen the arrest of ministers in the Second Republic.
No. I hope you don't buy that. That's just propaganda. Very poor propaganda, you know. Because when you look at all indicators in terms of performance of the economy, in terms of corruption in the country, you know, that gold mafia, that Moti Zunadi thing, you know, and this SI for looting, these 32 helicopters which were, you know, overpriced and illegally bought. You know, some of these things will not take place under Mugabe. Mugabe was corrupt, there's no question about it. But these guys are brazen. very brazen, very authoritarian. Job Scala is in prison. It's almost getting to a year now. Garvuma has been convicted. We didn't have these excesses under Robert Mugabe. And these guys are insecure, very incompetent, and they're very quick to use force because they doubt their legitimacy. Whereas Mugabe had the veneer of being the founding father of the nation, brought independence, carried out the land reform program. This guy has done nothing. So he's very insecure, and also they're divided. It's a securocratic state. Their foundation is a coup d'etat. You can't build a democracy on a coup d'etat. That election in 2018 was rigged. Now we're going to an election without a voters' roll, with political leaders in prison, without political reforms, and he's boasting of 250 million personal money into an election. Mugabe would never do something like that. Not that he didn't have the money, but he was sophisticated enough to know that you don't boast about using your personal money. Personal money from where? That's national money. And right now, as I said in this presentation today, these guys have title deeds. They bought those farms using money obtained during banning, and they blackmailed those white farmers to give them title. So when there's a new government, you can't touch their farms. And no one is talking about it. We only knew about the 21 farms because of the divorce. These guys knew about it. Why didn't they tell us? You think they didn't know that Bona had 21 farms? The problem is they have more farms themselves. Okay, there's no way Robert Mugabe would get 40 farms and his deputies have one farm each. Not at all. But anyway, there has been no shift. There's no new dispensation in Zimbabwe. It has gotten worse on all fronts. And competence of the highest level in terms of the management of the economy, and then democratic space has been narrowed. Authoritarianism on steroids. And the tribalism is now clansmanship. Family, clans, and immediate relatives at the expense of the country.
But these guys were with Robert Mugabe for years.
Yes.
From the time before independence up to the time they ousted him from power in a coup. Wouldn't they have learned something about these Finnies that you're talking about?
That's the tragedy. Quite a number of people were hopeful after the coup because they were hoping that, well, maybe the coup could be a break with the past. It was a mistake because it was an internal conflict within ZANU that we're solving. They were not breaking the system. So they love the system. They have no objections to the system because the system benefits them. Arbitrage is my favorite one. They could stop arbitrage if they wanted to, but they can't stop it because arbitrage is a looting tool. You can move from $10,000 to $2 million in a week without production. By moving from your personal funds to the parallel market, from the parallel market to the central bank, you buy it in official rate, you go back. If you do that 3 times, you can convert $10,000 to $2 million. That's the system that is beneficial to them. So they are aware of the vices in the system, but the vices are to their benefit.
We are going into an election just in a few months. What is it that you see as a former prime minister, as an academic,
Deputy Prime Minister,
as a former deputy prime minister, as an academic, and as a Zimbabwe?
It's a tragedy because I don't see anything positive coming out of it. Because already the stories around the voters' roll this week, where people go and they can't find their names, the voters' roll is not available to the opposition. The political opposition is being harassed. Job Scala and Gary Vume are in prison, are locked up as we speak. What kind of election can you have when your opponents are locked up? When your opponents cannot hold political rallies? So, and then in addition to the uneven playing field, then there's the brute force used in rigging. So I don't see anything happening that is positive because there have been no political reforms, and also the opposition is not being given an opportunity to campaign freely in the country. So it's a tough call.
Professor, we are just talking about your book that you have just launched, and your book is Ideas and Solutions. Now, you're talking about the crisis that is in this country. Does your book, the volume 3, proffer any ideas and solutions to this arbitrage, crass corruption?
Yes. Oh, yeah. I try to paint a picture of how we can solve these problems. The starting point is we must work together and create a national vision which is shared across the political divide. Once we have that national vision, we must be clear on our values. What are our values as a people? And then having done that, we say, what is the strategy? What is the game plan that can take us from where we are in the valley to the house on the top of the hill, which is our vision? And having crafted the strategy, you say, how do we implement this? Where is the implementation matrix? Who is going to do what? When are they doing it? What are the milestones and measures of success? Where are the resources going to come from? How are we going to measure success or lack of it? How are we going to feedback to produce the outcome we want? So I share some frameworks of how to solve this. But beyond Zimbabwe, I say that we are going to succeed as SADC. We're going to succeed as COMESA. We're going to succeed as the African Union because scale, the economies of scale are very critical under globalization.
But do you think the people have that mind, given that we can't even agree on who should govern Zimbabwe freely and democratically?
Yeah, it's a tall order, but we must do it in parallel. We must not say fix the country first, then the region. No, everything must be done at the same time. Work on the country, solve the problems in the country, work on the region, solve the things you can do at the regional level, but more importantly, put a premium on African unity, African integration, because numbers are what is going to make a difference, economies of scale. But there's no such thing as a free lunch. For you to embrace continental integration, you must give up on national sovereignty. Elements of national sovereignty must be given up. To embrace regional integration, you must give up on some elements of national sovereignty. So that as a Zimbabwean, you must be able to say, I'm an African first, a citizen of SADC second, and a Zimbabwean third. A South African must be able to say, I'm an African first, a citizen of SADC second, South African third. Mentally, we're not there yet.
Xenophobia?
We are. You see? Xenophobia against other Africans. So we have a long way to go as citizens. Also the leaders themselves. They're so caught up in being president, being prime minister of starving people. When we are successful, there will be one president on the continent, maybe coming from Togo. And Cyril Ramaphosa will be Minister of Agriculture. Mnangagwa will be Minister of Tourism, maybe. Kagame, Minister of the Police. For Africa, when we do that, the economy will be strong and our people will benefit. But the leaders and their egos won't be satisfied. So the leaders pay lip service to integration because they want to be a president. They want to be in charge of these colonial borders. These borders are foreign to us. We must take down those borders. But it will take time because we need consciousness, we need commitment, we need the citizens themselves to be on board. Because the citizens are very national interest driven. You mentioned xenophobia. We are very inward looking. We are very national interest driven as opposed to collective regional interests. So there's work to be done among the citizens and also among the leaders. But more importantly, economically, when we pool our resources together, we can have economies of scale. For example, the argument given against beneficiaries, for example, is, we don't have a critical mass. You can, benefit the diamonds. But if we now have the diamond cluster with Angola, Botswana, South Africa, Zimbabwe in there, we get the scale. If we're platinum, Zimbabwe and South Africa, 90% of platinum is under our control. So regional integration allows us to do beneficiation and value addition. Can you imagine if you were to build a tractor, just a tractor, and then you say, all governments in Africa must buy that tractor. Already there's a market there. You build a truck in Ghana, and that truck is supposed to be bought by all the Africans. A cell phone, from Botswana, and we say, as Africans, that's our cell phone. So in other words, that's what the Chinese do. One of the reasons why the Chinese are so successful, they have 1.4 billion Chinese going one direction. The Indians, 1.3 billion Chinese going one direction. We need Africans to be marshalling their human capital and their numbers in one direction, their natural resources together. But it will take some time. But we must fix our countries, we must fix our region, and then the continent.
You had the opportunity to talk to Mugabe and you share some of his thoughts in this book.
Yes, in detail.
Yes. What are some of the most profound thoughts that he shared with you that you'd want to share with our viewers?
One of the most important ones is that he was very skeptical about the land reform program. He told me that this land reform program will be challenged by future generations. And that explains why they went for title. Because once you have a title, no one can take the land from you. But 99 leases can be taken away from you. So he was posturing about land reform program and 99 leases, whereas actually he did not agree with that. And he went and got title for his kids. Secondly, the Chitepo, death. Mugabe doesn't believe that Smith did it or the Zambians. He actually blames his colleagues. But he never said it because he made an alliance, a marriage of convenience with some of these guys. But internally he was very upset because he was very close to John Mataure. Now John Mataure was killed at the hands of ZANU. They don't even refuse to accept the fact. Tongo Gara says in a court, John Mataure was killed at the hands of ZANU. And Mugabe was very fond of John Mataure. He's very upset when he talks about the way John Mataure was killed. Another one was his heroes. He never talked about his heroes because he didn't want you to think he's got heroes. He thought he was the hero. But privately, he says, when I went to Ghana, I was trying to make money so that I can go to London and become a lawyer like Chitepo. So he was overly impressed by Chitepo and wanted to be like Chitepo. So when he went to Ghana, he was trying to raise money to go to school so that he can become a Chitepo. That's all in my book. Then writing, I asked him, why don't you write and try to give me examples of how Castro did it, how Steve Jobs did it? But he always changed the subject. But in my book, I discuss our conversations. We're very close because number one, he was an Anglophile. And because I went to Oxford, he was very, respectful of that. And also the education bit. And then also I was very principled. If I say yes, it's a yes. If I say no, it's a no. And so in history, we used to talk about history. So there are many insights there about Mugabe's views that will shock many people because he never said it, but he said it to me.
Did he ever say anything about leadership succession within his own party?
So that's the problem where we argued a lot. I was telling him, Mr. President, he was thinking about legacy. What will be your legacy when you're gone? Oh, what legacy? He was so concerned about the here and now. He had no big picture. He was a small man in terms of legacy. He refused to address the issue of succession, whereas if he has done that, that could have protected his legacy. So I saw a very small man intellectually, a very small man in terms of legacy. Very concerned about the here and now, and also caught up on gossip and, anyway, read my book.
You also, as Deputy Prime Minister, oversaw ministers' performance in
Yes, I supervised Mnangagwa.
Tell us,
he's my student,
tell us about his performance.
Very average, not very competent, no. But I supervised them. All these guys are my students. The Prime Minister, the President, and the Deputy Prime Minister were the three principals. We used to look at these ministers and grade them. So, but read my book, but anyway, I worked with these guys and I supervised them, yes. And even these army guys, Chiwenga and them, they used to sit in the Security Council. And, so I know them very well.
When you sit in cabinet, is there anything that intrigued you about our president now, President Emmerson Mnangagwa?
I think most of my insights are in the book. I say a lot about him and other people.
You said you were hard on him.
Read the book. I was fair on him.
You have stayed out of politics since the end of the inclusive government. Is there any chance that we are going to see Arthur Mutambara?
Look, I have a lot of respect for my colleagues in the CCC. I have a lot of respect for President Chamisa. They're doing a great job. And I try as much as I can to advise quietly, but they're doing a good job and they deserve our support. They could fix one or two things here and there, but I communicate with them privately and tell them what needs to be done. But my colleagues in the CCC are doing a good job, and President Chamisa is doing a good job.
So you are staying out of politics. You have retired from politics.
Now, if they continue failing, I might have to reconsider my retirement. But for now, I'm teaching, I'm a professor and a director at the Institute of the Future of Knowledge. That's what I'm doing for now. But I keep my options open. As a Zimbabwean, because remember, it's important that as Zimbabweans we fix our country. We'll never be respected as Zimbabweans unless Zimbabwe is doing well as a country. So I have a duty and obligation in my different ways and working with others to make Zimbabwe successful.
Just maybe share with us if you have any amazing moment that you cherished about the GNU when you were Deputy Prime Minister.
I think what I found fascinating was the ability for Zimbabweans to work together. ZANU-PF, MDCT, our MDC, we're working very well together. So which means that is evidence that when we find each other, we can work together. To me, that was fascinating. In cabinet, in committees, we're able to deliver the constitution. That's our major result. We didn't do well on the political reforms. That's guilty as charged. We did well on the economy. The economy was fairly stable. Again, because of Team Zimbabwe approach. We put Zimbabwe first, and that was very effective. So the Team Zimbabwe thing was very interesting for me. And also a bed of ideas, because we're a team of rivals. So the cabinet was very exciting because you had to know your story, because people would take you up on issues. Whereas in this cabinet here, they're all sycophants.
Why do you say so?
They belong to the same group, and the group think. We used to challenge Mugabe. I mean, read the book. I told him off in our first cabinet. You know, Mugabe had a very bad way of chairing cabinet where he would interject while you're talking. Mm-hmm. And in one of my first meetings, I said to him, Mr. President, what I'm saying now is in complete disagreement with you. I'm in total disagreement. I don't agree with you. I don't share your views. They kept quiet. That shook him. No one can say that to Edin right now in that cabinet there. Now, we were able to do that because we're not coming from Mugabe's party. So there was dynamism there. And from that day, Mugabe never, ever interjected my speech because he knew that I would not take that from him. So that was a different cabinet altogether. These are sycophants. Tell me one individual in this cabinet who can say no to Mnangagwa. They say, I don't agree with you, Mnangagwa. You're wrong on this matter. Tell me one minister who can do that in this cabinet. Not a chance. That's why Mugabe liked me, because I told him off. And he respected the guts that I had. And also that I was analytical. But it's all in the book. So I don't want to preempt your joy as you read the book.
Now we're just going to cross over to the launch of this amazing book. And we're going to hear what people have said about this book, the ideas and solutions by the Deputy Prime Minister and beyond, in search of the elusive Zimbabwean dream, an autobiography of thought leadership by Arthur Mutambara, popularly known as Ago. Now, Professor, I want to thank you very much for joining me on this, the Free Talk and Power Partnership with the Frederick Newman Foundation. But just before you leave, just before we let you leave, what message from your heart, what would you want to share with the people of your country, fellow countrymen, especially as we go to this?
We, the people of Zimbabwe, are the ones we have been waiting for. No one is coming to save us. We are going to save ourselves. We must understand that the Zimbabwean situation, the Zimbabwean problems will be solved by Zimbabweans. Let us take a vested interest approach to Zimbabwe. We are the ones we have been waiting for. As a Zimbabwean, as an African, you never be respected unless and until Zimbabwe is doing well as a country, unless and until the continent of Africa is peaceful and prosperous. It doesn't matter what your profession is, journalist, academic, engineer, doctor, pharmacist, farmer. Our destinies are intertwined, and we must take personal responsibility. We must have personal agency in terms of resolving the matters of Zimbabwe. You and I have a duty and obligation to resolve the Zimbabwean crisis.
Thank you very much, Professor Arthur Mutambara, our former Deputy Prime Minister in the Inclusive Government. Now, I just want to read something from this book that resonates from the issues that you were talking about, Professor. And it says, the second lesson we learn from sport is about the importance of teams and team spirit. In most sports, competition is between teams of players. I know, though, that with chess and golf, each competitor is on his or her own. But even then, the competitor still has a team of organizers, managers and handlers. The team and team spirit are central in sport. We must embrace and leverage the team spirit. This is the message we can extract from sport. Zimbabwe needs a team spirit. SADC needs a team spirit. Africa needs a team spirit if we are going to have a place on the table of the family of nations across this globe. Alone, we can never do it. This will always be the Free Talk with me, your host as usual, Dara Blessed Mhlanga, in proud partnership with the Frederick Newman Foundation, and having the pleasure to host the man of the moment, the rockstar.
Thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you very much, Professor, and wish you the best of luck.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that introduction, and thank you for allowing me this opportunity to share. We are talking about in search of the Zimbabwean dream, but actually because of the nature of the problems we are addressing and the nature of the solutions, we are talking about in search of the African dream. Because the solutions we seek to put forward for Zimbabwe are applicable in most African countries. The problems we are grappling with in Zimbabwe are prevalent in many African countries. Even in the global south, we have challenges as well. So it's in search of the Zimbabwean dream, in search of the African dream, in pursuit of the global south ambition. Now, what's different now is we're sick and tired of being sick and tired of describing problems. What are the answers? What are the solutions? Our concentration in Volume 3 is on ideas and solutions. Yes, we must understand the problems. Yes, we must understand the causes of the problems. But of paramount importance is crafting solutions and having ideas on a way forward. It's part 3 of 3 volumes, where I'm documenting the evolution of my thoughts, ideas, and perspectives over 40 years, from 1983 when I was in Form 3 to today. That's the journey that we're carrying out in the 3 volumes. And then we also have selected autobiographical material to give context to the ideas and to the thoughts. Volume 1 was about the formative years in the big wide world. And the second volume was Path to Power, Path to Influence. Dr. Makoni, Path to Influence. And then now we're talking about ideas and solutions, starting from 2009 to the present. What we mean by thought leadership, we mean intellectual influence through innovative and pioneering thinking. We're very ambitious. We're saying, why can't we have intellectual influence through innovative and pioneering thinking? That's what we mean by thought leadership. But there's a paradox, there's a problem. What is the problem? Those with power or influence have neither ideas nor solutions, but they're holding the reins of power, bankrupt as they are in terms of ideas and solutions. And those with ideas, like Timber, ideas and solutions, have neither power nor influence. The challenge is, how do we marry the two? How can you have ideas and solutions on one end and some influence and some power so that we can improve the conditions of our people, of ourselves? We must address that paradox where we have that conflict. What are the key messages? We must write. We must document. Africans must have agents in the writing of African history. We must strive for both academic excellence and social responsibility. For those in the youth, in the students' union, we don't want you to be making a lot of noise politically when you are failing in class. Let us see you being a student leader and being number one in your class, otherwise you don't impress us. In fact, if you are not doing well in class, you shouldn't be SRC president. If you are failing, no, don't be secretary of the students' union. We don't want that. Knowledge is global. We must construct what we call counter-hegemonies, produce and articulate alternative forms of knowledge and ideologies. Why? Because sometimes those that define you will actually determine your life chances. We must propel the struggle of the ruled and the oppressed and be able to be producers of historical accounts. Documentation is important because every successful civilization has had a reading culture and a writing culture. Documentation is divine. And yes, we have something to teach the world. When I say Ubuntu, I am because we are because I am because you are because I am. This philosophical framework is not there in Europe, in Japan, in China. It's very African. How are we utilizing it in business? How are you utilizing it in academia? These are some of the issues we try to address in this volume. Collective humanity, shared dignity, collective success. That's Ubuntu for you. We are more concerned about collective success as opposed to individual success. We care about shared dignity, and we want to move forward. What is the context of this book? Well, what we have in Zimbabwe: low production, low productivity, low capacity utilization, unprecedented deindustrialization. All these economic challenges give the background of this book. We try to address them in the writings in the book. Zimbabwe has been in the press recently for the wrong reasons. And this book will make you understand why these things are happening. The gold mafia, Zunadi Moti and the coup plotters. Zunadi paid the vice president and the president and also a judge to sanitize the coup. Bonus 21 farms. In my book, you get to understand why these things are happening. And also to force you to think, when you say Bonus 21 farms, what about the other two sons? So Mugabe Diamond Farm. We must be generous and say 40. Generous. I mean, it's more, but we be conservative. Now, here's the question. If Mugabe had 40 farms, how about his deputies? How about his lieutenants? You think in a system that is corrupt, the president will have 40 farms, and the vice will have one, the general one, the judge one? We are not naive. Go figure, the journalists are here. Go and tell me, go and find out how many the other people have. I saw the Herald was very excited about bonus farms, things that they're hitting the old regime, not realizing that actually it has got serious implications on the current regime. How many farms do you have? And also, we've got to say on farms later on. And then we have the enabling routing statutory instrument which has been rescinded. My book will give you the context why these things do happen. And of course, the 32 helicopters which were illegally procured and overpriced. Shame on you, Zimbabwe. What's going on? Read my book, and maybe you can get solutions. Then the currency issues, I won't go into that. You know, issues are on currency, but we must seek solutions. We must have reserves to back the currency. We must have fiscal consolidation. We must ring fence savings and deposits. It is very saddening to find a headmaster who has been doing his job for 50 years and that can't afford a meal now because they are retired at 90. And they worked for 50 years, their savings were destroyed by inflation. How can we ring fence savings and protect value? Political problems, the coup d'etat, and the stolen election. And now we're moving towards another election. What are the problems? incarceration of opposition leaders. Job Sikala, Ngari Vume, where are they? No reforms, voters' roll is not available to the opposition, and we have a fraudulent limitation framework. How can we have a free and fair election within this context? These are issues that we need to grapple with. In terms of solutions, as prescribed in the book, we're saying, why don't you have a shared economic prosperity? Why don't you have a drive towards governance and legitimacy? Why don't you have macroeconomic stability? These are the pillars we need to put in place to solve our situation. So what we need a second republic. We don't have a second republic. A second republic must be peaceful, democratic, and prosperous. A second republic cannot be declared. A new dispensation is end, not declared. We need to work towards having a shared national vision and also a shared competitive national identity. Very clear on the national vision, very clear on the strategy, very clear on execution. These are the things we need to do as a collective in Zimbabwe. A shared national vision across the political divide. The strategy, which is the game plan to take us from where we are to the promised land. And then execution, execution, execution. And of course, we must be clear on our branding strategy. Okay? Why ideas and solutions? We're saying, let us have an alternative vision and a compelling strategy for Zimbabwe, for Africa, and for the global south. Not just criticizing and describing problems, but providing actionable, implementable, timeline, and well-sourced plans. This is why we are focusing on solutions in this book. What are the breakdown in the book? We have a rocky start with GNU, so we go through some lessons and the experience of the GNU, and then the global agenda here, mainly the constitution, where we succeeded, on reforms where we didn't do as well, and then the economy, which was a fairly successful adventure. Then we have Mugabe's liberation struggle. I had a unique opportunity, Dr. Makoni, because President Mugabe liked me. I didn't sell out Timber. He liked me. He liked for 4 reasons. Number one, he was an Anglophile. I went to Oxford. So to him I was like, because I was an Anglophile. He liked me because I went to Oxford. Secondly, I got a bit of school. PhD from Oxford. Mugabe was overly impressed because I had PhD from Oxford. So he liked me because of education. Number 3, I'm a history buff. I love history. I like asking questions, and Mugabe liked to talk. So I'd ask him, tell me one Ndabanic story. Tell me about Rubo, tell me about Tobogar, and he'd narrate all these things to me. So he liked that interface because I was asking him things. The last point, I was very principled to a fault. It's either yes or no, and I don't change. Mugabe liked that because he knew with Mutambara, you know where you stand. With other people, he couldn't because it was change. So we got along well, so I had 3 hours of bilaterals because of that understanding. And so you get in the book some insights, some views of Mugabe that he never told you, but told me. So you are lucky. What are the running themes in the book? Pan-Africanism, regional integration, African agency. You saw what happened during COVID with no agency. We must have African agency over a number of things. The discipline of gratitude. Grateful people are happy people, not the other way around. Read the book. Preserve the asset. The most important asset you have is your health. And we talk about how we preserve that asset. Technology is your friend. Artificial intelligence, artificial general intelligence, generative AI, ChatGPT. Don't fight those guys. They're your friend. Even if you want to fight, you won't succeed. Once technology has been invented, you can't uninvent it. Bitcoin. Make it work for you. Technology is your friend and you can't fight it. So those are some of the things we have in the book. Just to dramatize the issue of regional integration, Dr. Makoni, where it's SADC. Those are not economies. These are Mickey Mouse economies. Zimbabwe, $25 billion. What is that? Chicken change. South Africa, $500 billion, nothing. Botswana, that's not a country. Even Nigeria, there's a problem. This is a bit better. SADC, look at those numbers. TFTA, that's better. And let's look at real economies. China, 1.44 billion people, GDP 19.9. India, 1.4. In fact, it's a toss-up between the two now. Some people are saying India has overtaken China now in population. GDP, 3.3 trillion. US, those are economies. And there's our economy, if we work together as a continent. 1.35 billion people, GDP, $2.5 trillion. This is the Africa that should negotiate, not Zimbabwe, not Malawi, not South Africa. Can you imagine if I was to rock up and say, here come, I'm the African. I speak on behalf of 1.35 billion people, and behind me I have a GDP of $2.5 trillion. The Americans will listen to me, not out of love, out of economics. The Chinese will engage me, not out of love, out of economics. That is the Africa we must work for. Not these ones. This is Mickey Mouse economy. Here is global GDP. Do you see Africa there? Do you see oh, I see Africa at the top. What about South Africa? What about Botswana? Zimbabwe is not even there. How can a country which is non-existent negotiate with China? Do you see yourself there? No, you don't. $25 billion is chicken change. I can see China, I can see the US, I can see Germany, I can see France, I can see United Africa. You can't have Zimbabwe have mega deals with China when they are not existent. Will tell me I don't see them. That's global GDP. We're dramatizing the importance of scale, the importance of working together. If we work together as Africa, then we can make some moves. And also we must have clusters. Can you imagine if we have a diamond cluster, Botswana, South Africa, DRC, and Zimbabwe, and Angola, who control diamonds globally, who control the price of diamonds. Platinum, Zimbabwe, South Africa, who control platinum globally. This is the strategy we are pushing for Africa. Some revelations from the book. Arbitrage. I saw Reverend Matonga here. Arbitrage criminalizes everyone, including the pastor. If you have your $500 US dollars, are you going to change it on the parallel market or on the official market? Tell me, Reverend. So the Reverend has been compromised. The bishop has been compromised. The prophet has been compromised. So arbitrage means official versus parallel. Everyone goes to the parallel, including our prophets. Because the prophets are dubious anyway. Including the pastors and the reverends. Now arbitrage is a major looting tool, so they'll never remove it in Zimbabwe because they benefit from it. Let me dramatize to you. During Gono's days and now, it was a major tool. Illustration. If you start with $10,000 US dollars, $10,000 US dollars, let's say the exchange rate is officially 20 and paro 200. You take the 10,000, you go to the paro, you buy your bond notes or RTGSs. You go to the central bank because you are friends with John Makutka or Gono, you buy the dollars at the official. You go back to the paro, you buy the RTGS or the bonds, and you go back this way. I talk about it in the book. You can convert, Dr. Makoni, 10,000 US dollars into 2 million US dollars with no production. In a week, 10,000 big ones into 2 million big ones, not RTGS US dollars. It happened in this country. And you know the outcome of that, we go back to the farms now. Do you know that, and this is information I got from working in the system, none of these big guys have 99-year leases. They're holding title. Yeah. Do you know that? Yeah. Those 21 farms that Bona and her ex-husband talk about, actually they have title. You, the middle class, you, the war vet and small little army commander, you have 99, the big ones have title. How did they get title? What they did was they would chase away the farmer, take the land. The farmer goes to Harare, lives in a shack, goes to Australia, lives in a shack, and they follow them after 6 months. Mr. Farmer or Madam Farmer, what is the value of your farm? Oh, my farm is worth $50 million. Yeah. You never get anything. We'll never pay compensation anyway. You said 15? How about 4 million? And the farmer is desperate. The white farmer is a squatter in Australia and is dangled 4 million. And what do? They take the 4 million, they sign away the title, they don't tell anyone. Why? Because they will be accused of benefiting from ZANU-PF patronage. So these white farmers, some of them have given away their title. Now the question, how did they get the money? Arbitrage. They paid 4 million. What did they get 4 million from? They got 4 million from the arbitrage. During the Gono days, 10,000 becomes 2 million. 20,000 becomes 4 million. Then you buy a farm. Aha! You are here, the journalists. Go figure. Go and find out whether these guys are holding. They don't hold 99 leases. They are holding title. What it means is when Timber is president, he can't do nothing about it because the guys are holding title. Either you believe in title or you don't. Property rights. So they are protected. And what I find fascinating, which I put in my book, was Mugabe's own view about the land reform program. Mugabe says, Mutambara, this land reform program will be challenged by future generations. 50 years from now, 100 years from now, when young people are sitting down, they say, how could those guys in the year 2000 parcel the land to themselves? We were not there. So Mugabe had no confidence in this land reform program. He told me that it would be challenged by future generations. So if you worry about what you do then, you go and get a title. Once you get title, it can be challenged. Go and find out. And I explained there, 99 leases are for the unimportant. If you're holding 99 leases, you are nobody. You are nobody. You are just a raw vet or some little guy. The ministers, the generals, the judges, they own title. Go and find out. I'm going to start winding down now. When we say documentation, we must think about the written word, and then we must pictures. That's why I put pictures in the book. You must have videos. You must have other artifacts. Documentation of history is not only written. We need pictures, we need videos, we need other artifacts. And the size of the book is 968 pages. 8 sections of pictures. Without pictures, the publisher does not put numbers on picture pages. So this is 720, actually it's 968. And it's important that we document. The Chinese, we told the Chinese, we don't want to sell raw copper, raw chrome, we want to do beneficiation. But once we left government, they went back to the old system of selling raw materials. But we tried our best with Professor Zeno Chiwe to push for beneficiation with the Chinese. And Jack is here, very supportive and also doing very well in her own right. I hope she'll be able to say a few things here. And African Americans working together here. Again, we can work together in Zimbabwe. You look at the inclusive government there, Mashakada, Mangoma, Chombo. We were talking. Okay? And this is where when we signed the Constitution, again, history is recorded by way of pictures, by way of writing, and by way of videos as well. The Prime Minister there, Arts, Ghana, Global, and Soccer as well. The World Economic Forum. So all these things you find in there, again, General Mujuru, I'm one of the few people in this country who saw that body. And I give an account of that experience in my book. Also, Mugabe's reaction, which was very interesting. But I was one of the who saw the body. It was not something from a normal fire. But I don't want to preempt your reading. But And I also had an opportunity to talk to him about his own views about Mugabe. He used to say, pointing at Mugabe. And then Tegere there, another hero of the struggle, and Lacoste there, and the bigger Lacoste there. We used to supervise these guys, so you need to ask us whether they're good ministers. They're not presidents, but I supervise them, I got the records. So I can share and inform you whether they were able or not able. Kasipuere, our colleagues in there. And the coup plot, that one too. And the coup plotters, they were talking coup, these guys. They were already thinking about it. But we were too blind, deaf, and dumb to see it coming. President Chamisa there. I see Madugu somewhere there. The contrarian. He goes against the grain. You must tell us, why do you go against the grain? Oh yeah, this is now the coup. We attended the inauguration of the coup president. You need to ask us why we did it, but we did it. And the reason I put them in the book. And that's my brother, congratulating my brother. And I'm saying, hey, let's do this. This is the coup. This is the coup. Dr. Wagon was clever enough not to come. Some of us went there. The Prime Minister did dinner of the coup. And so what I'm saying, history is also written by way of coming to the end here now. And then the end of the old man for paying our respects. So the Constitution was a major achievement. And Advocate Martinenga is here. We'll be able to say a few words about that. But that was our...
The Constitutional Select Committee led the process, holding public hearings and consultations over the making of a new constitution for Zimbabwe. 2 all-stakeholders conferences were held, and the draft was produced amid power struggles among the political players. The intervention of principles to the global political agreement gave way to the referendum.
We don't write a constitution for today. We write a constitution for posterity, for future generations.
As a country, we have invested so much in this process, in both financial and material terms, if indeed in time terms.
We are the ones who agreed that no, we shall not have Kariba. We must now have a people-driven constitution.
This set the stage for approval by the electorate, parliament, and now it has been signed into law.
I think we can all say today is a great day for our country. For the first time in the history of this country, we have a constitution that we've authored on our own without the facilitation of foreigners. This is a dramatic improvement from Lancaster House. I think that is what we should celebrate today, that Zimbabweans have come together and produce a constitution which will define the trajectory of our country. As we do this celebration, for me, we must pick up a few lessons. The first one says, why have we succeeded? Why were we able to deliver a constitution? We are able to do so by emphasizing that which unites us and de-emphasizing our differences. We are able to achieve this constitution, Your Excellency, by working together, by cooperating among ourselves, by putting Zimbabwe first, by pushing a Team Zimbabwe approach. What we must do going forward is to keep the same spirit, the same value system that has enabled us to achieve a new constitution. As we move towards these elections, why don't we maintain the same spirit of cooperation, the same spirit that says we are all Zimbabweans? There is more that unites us than that which divides us. We are all Zimbabweans, irrespective of the outcome of those elections. I want us to pick up the lessons and the spirit of the crafting of this constitution into a way of life in Zimbabwe, in particular as we move towards the elections. Second lesson, second message. A constitution, Your Excellency, is a piece of paper. We must now start living the document. We must make the document part of our lives. In other words, how do we cultivate, how do we develop in the country a culture of respecting the Constitution, a tradition of respecting the Constitution? Constitutionalism is more important than a constitution. If we look at our short history from 1980 to now, there are things we have done in this country which were not provided for by the Constitution, meaning we have violated our own Constitution as Zimbabweans. So I want to ensure that we understand this. Having a good Constitution, having a great Constitution is not sufficient for us to have a prosperous nation. We must build among ourselves the tradition, the behavior, the culture of respecting the Constitution. That's harder than a piece of paper. Constitutionalism cannot be legislated. Constitutionalism cannot be proclaimed by a signature. Constitutionalism is developed by living by example, by social mobilization, by civic education. It takes time, but the journey starts today. The last message. Yes, we've had a very vigorous debate in the past 4.5 years on the Constitution. Outreach programs, huge conversations in the country. Well done, Zimbabwe. But where is the conversation on the economy? Where is the enthusiasm on the debate on natural resources, on our minerals? I am saying the spirit, the stamina we have manifested as we craft a new constitution must be deployed in the debate of how we can leverage our minerals to drive our economy, how we can make Zimbabwe a prosperous economy. Meaning, let us pick up lessons from the process of crafting the constitution into the business of the economy, so that in addition to having a good constitution, we are going to have a vibrant economy. I just thought at this juncture, we can pick up those 3 lessons. Understanding why we are successful in this endeavor. And number 2, realizing that the document, the paper, is not enough. We need constitutionalism. And lastly, the stomach is more important than the Constitution. I thank you very much. Mr. Gumbo, fellow Zimbabweans and members of the tourism ecosystem, I'm just happy to be here to launch this fair. And I want to start by explaining why I call this an ecosystem. What we want to do in this country is to have an approach that says, let us approach tourism as an ecosystem where we take cognizance of all the players, the government, the private sector, the buyers, the academy, civic society, and the media. Our strategy and our approach to tourism must be an ecosystem approach where we listen to everyone and take cognizance of the views of every sector that is involved in tourism. But more importantly, we want to see partnerships where the government partners with the private sector, where the government partners with the media and civic society to deliver and monitor tourism products. Why? Because tourism is such a product that requires partnerships. Some of the products are owned by the state, but the business is executed by the private sector. The marketing is done by international buyers. So we need an ecosystem approach that will allow us to unlock value from tourism. That's why we say, thank you, the tourism ecosystem, for a show which is bigger than we've ever had in this country. The foreign buyers, the local exhibitors, our activities this year are a bamba harvest. I want to thank you for this. Now, as we launch this fair, we are now doing things differently in this country. And I want to emphasize 3 things we're doing differently in this country around Sanganai, Kanganai. The first one is to say, this is no longer a Zimbabwean fair. It's no longer a Zimbabwean occasion or a Zimbabwean event. We are now positioning it as a Pan-African event, as a Pan-African fair. Meaning, we are saying, come to Zimbabwe and you are going to be exposed to Africa. Come to Zimbabwe, you are going to be exposed to SADC, to COMESA. So we are repositioning this fair as a Pan-African fair, so that we're going to be bigger than the South African one, because ours is Pan-African. It's bigger and better. That's what we're doing differently now. This is now a Pan-African Sanganai affair, where we cross-sell and package our products as regional products, where we work together with Botswana and Zambia and South Africa, so that the international buyer is buying a regional product, so that the international buyer is buying a Pan-African product. This is what's different. This is our new approach to this fair, to our guests from outside the country, to the international buyers. Under globalization, the only viable unit of analysis is the region. Under globalization, the only viable unit of analysis is the continent. South Africa won't make it as South Africa, they're going to make it as SADC. Zambia won't make it as Zambia, they're going to make it as COMESA, as the African continent. Numbers, scale. That's why I'm very happy to see our ambassador from China. In China, we talk about 1.3 billion people and a GDP of $7 trillion. Little Zimbabwe, what are our numbers? 12 million people and GDP, pick a number, $10 billion. Chicken change. South Africa, you think you are big, you are small. What are your numbers? South Africa, my friends, you are 50 million people and $380 billion GDP. Chicken change. You will not make it under globalization as a country. We are going to make it as SADC. We're going to make it as COMESA. We're going to make it as the African continent. What are the numbers? We're talking about 250 million people in SADC, 400 million people in COMESA, and 1 billion Africans. Surely, if we're to go to China and say, Mr. China, Madam China, here I come, and I represent 1 billion Africans, and I also have a GDP of $1 trillion, surely the Chinese will listen to you, not out of love, out of economics.
Anyway, you can watch that later on. Now, with volume 3, Dr. Mabona, am I done?
Not yet.
Is this the end? Certainly not. The next 2 projects, we'll be talking a lot about artificial intelligence, artificial general intelligence, ChatGPT. The Bible is coming. That book is going to address all those things. It's the next project. Almost done. I'm sending the manuscript today. It's 1,000 pages of electrical engineering in the 4IR by Taylor Francis. That's my publisher. We must keep writing. The day you stop writing is the day you die. Let's keep writing and reading. Next project, number 2. The AGO Mutambara story from 1640 AD to the present. That's my final chapter, my final book. What I've done is I've done research 10 generations above my father. So I'll start from there, coming down to great-grandfather, grandfather, father, yours truly, then biographical. So in the 4 chapters, I won't be in the book. It will be other people. This one, there will be no fancy ideas. I'm not trying to save the world with this one. I'm just telling a story. Even the funny ones about hooliganism and all that. Just a plain story, and like volume 1 and 2, 3. No fancy ideas, no motivation to change the world, just a plain story. But you have to wait a bit for that one. You know, so the Mutambara people, these are the ancestors, 10 above me. Down to Charima, then to Papiro, my great-grandfather. Then Chief Mutambara Marije, my grandfather. Then Philon Joseph Mutambara, my father. Then yours truly, number 12. That is the story there. And how did we spend the days and so on. That is the man. That is Munyavi, Chief Papiro Mutambara number 1. And he was doing very well. 12 wives and 43 children. And he was struggling with 1. So I need to go back there. Anyway, that's the founder of Mutambara. But his number, as you can see, is number 9 in my village. But that's where we, and some of Mutambaras are here, they're going to be singing, and at the time, Achaimba. And that's my grandfather, and so on. Anyway, we are. And my father was a graduate Ford here. Then my mother, primary school teacher. Let's go to the chapel and get married. Graduate from Fort here, primary school teacher. Then something happened, and those kids were in the village, marooned in the village. Quite bad, hungry. I'm very hungry. These taters were not taking care of me. That's my 3 sisters and myself. I stayed in the village, Mutambara, for 11 years continuously. I only left to go to Mutari twice. Do you understand me? Twice in 11 years. Okay. Anyway, 4 out of 4 PhDs. 2 out of 4 professors. What happened? Wait for the book. Anyway, that's for the other book. Now we're going to volume 3. We are done. Dr. Maboni, you must write, we must document, and thank you so very much.
Wow. This guy admires his great-grandmother, father, who had 12 wives. And I congratulate him for keeping him on one side. Let me say that honestly, the energy Mutambara has is enormous. As he has indicated, he has written a lot. He has a lot to say. He has put so many pictures. He continues to want to say a lot more. So we can only glean a little bit of our feeling that we have gained after touching aspects of the book. The first one which comes to my mind is the fact that, he gives you specific facts. And it's up to you as a reader to agree or disagree. And on top of that, he gives you his own view to trigger some kind of reflection, debate, dialogue, either in your own mind or in your own situation, and see whether we can get some answers to move forward. He goes on to reflect on the political scenario, especially in Africa. One point which is very clear is that, in Africa, we tend to look at different points of view, those who hold different points of view as enemies. Even when you are within the same organization, instead of looking at them as actually contributors to knowledge, and you should actually take advantage of any views they may have in order to make progress. I think he states it both at a very micro level and right up to the continental level. The third point I pick is the critical need to work together. This is our African disease, honestly. This setup we have and history in general has shown that those who really cannot hold together, they are just taken advantage of. He has indicated in terms of the figures of our GDP, if it was Africa, and look where we are as small nations. But it goes right down to individuals. We fail to work together. And therefore we end up being taken advantage of all the time because we are not working together. In fact, even within small groupings, even in business, we fail to work together. And major projects that people can do require a lot of collaboration. Without that, it's a difficult thing. It then crosses over a whole range of difficulties we face. You may call it corruption, you may call it incompetence, failure to identify the right person for the right job. That is a big problem. I'm not sure to what extent we are able to pick correct and definitive answers to this. And I'm not sure, honestly, whether it is just about incompetence or it is either corruption for money, or there are other fundamental problems we have. Let me just touch on a few. You know, if you look at how many minutes do I have? Oh my God, so, oh gosh, okay. If you look at the institutions, whether you go to the railways, to CESA, or whatever, all institutions have major maintenance programs that ought to be applied on an annual basis or on a certain period of time. It works reasonably well in the private sector, but it doesn't work well in the public sector. Why do we allow that to happen? And it goes to other countries. You can go to South Africa, it's the same story. The problems of water, the problems of power, it's the same story all over. But go to other countries. If you go to Singapore, around the late 50s, early 60s, massive corruption in Singapore. The very dirty city. You know, the Chinese, they spit all over. Official buildings, they put spitters to minimize the dirty. Within a period of 15 to 20 years, they killed all that. What did they do? Why can't we do it ourselves? What is the problem? There is a fundamental problem where we adopt things and start thinking we can just live like that instead of, you know, killing such attitudes. Unfortunately, because of the time limitations, I cannot go further and further. But I want to congratulate Professor Mutambara for at least putting together thoughts that, in my view, will trigger debate among many of our people, and hopefully we can get major steps forward in some way. Congratulations.
We have got two distinguished persons here. One is a Mambo, one is an Ishe. But I'm not going to indicate who is who. I think I leave it up to you. I just want to take on from what Professor Zinochiwo said. And you can excuse me because coming after two professors with really nothing to my name, you cannot possibly expect any comparison. I will just slightly do better. Professor Zinochiwe, we are where we are today, I think, because of our obsession with the big man syndrome.
Yes.
I think during the constitution making process, it was my pet subject. And I thought in the constitution which we are going to craft, the big man syndrome principle will be dealt a complete blow and will never ever have it again. But what has happened? We have now resurrected that big man syndrome in a very ugly manner. And Arthur has addressed this issue in his book. And this issue is addressed when he touches on amendments number 1 and number 2. When you look at those 2 amendments, they completely undo what we sought to achieve in the Constitution. And you say to yourself, why? Is it a personal crusade? Is it because people are consumed with power? Or is it because we just have not yet arrived? Because, and I want to quote from Arthur, what he says at page 659 about number 2, amendment number 2. And he says, well, for a lawyer, you have to quote a page. You must always be able to refer a listener to that page. And he says, irreparable damage has been done to our standing as a nation within the region, the continent, and globally. The amendment has extensively tarnished our national brand. We are irrevocably drifting towards a despicable pariah state devoid of any semblance of the rule of law. This undermining all our efforts of global re-engagement and acceptance in the global community. But I'm glad that Arthur has brought these issues up, and I'm hoping that when we read his books, that is, we manage to go through all of them. I wouldn't go through volume 3, which was available to me in a very short space of time. I think it will give you an impression of what we can achieve if we want to achieve it, because I think we can. The problem is that we think very short term. You already made reference to President Mugabe saying, this will be challenged in the fullness of time. But we don't think that ahead. We think today. If I have 21 farms, what about my cousin? What about my nephew? What about my sekuru? And incidentally, all those farms have different names. So you take time to track them. But we've got all the opportunity if we want to do things right. And we can do things right. I thank you.
Arthur was a preeminent scholar, not only of engineering, but on all matters that pertain to life. He was strong at a very young age and unabashedly allowed critique of life in the university as well as life in Zimbabwe. As a result, I became very curious and observed from a distance, and I continue to do so to this very day. As a businessman, as an economist, as a young global leader with him, we were together at Harvard University at the Kennedy School of Governance, and the anecdotes keep coming with Arthur. And I can testify that Volume 1, Volume 2, and Volume 3 indicate that Ago, as we knew him and know him as, is a repository of not just information, but processed and synthesized information. He has always been one to question the status quo, and more so, he questions incompetence. And almost always with that echoing voice of his, almost to depict the satire. I think recently Elon Musk indicated that incompetence in the limit is indistinguishable from sabotage. And I think Arthur will pull out his trigger any day, any time, at anyone, to point out incompetence. And so he's always a colleague that ignites courage amongst us who went to school with him. Politics is where I always figured he was destined. And I think he was an extraordinary student, a heroic one at that, imprisoned at that young age. We were to follow suit a couple of years later after getting courage that you speak your mind and you stand for your ideas. And so I served time twice after, inspired by the courage of expressing my mind as you've done, always. I think there are rights and privileges that are attached to our education. We that have had the opportunity to go to school must carry forth a transformative change of the lives that are before us. And we can therefore impact the future with positive and great impact and disrupt, if necessary, the status quo to change our world for the better. And Arthur depicts that. I think he depicts that. Not only did he depict that as a student, as a professional, as a consultant, but when in government, he didn't object either when we critiqued the ideas of government as business leaders. He was prepared to listen, and he has always been a defender of democracy. And I think on that account, I salute him. And together with him, as is contained in his book, I continue to dream of a just and equitable society, which is well within our grasp, as is depicted by the book. It's all in the book. The anecdotes, which he shared so fondly, I'm glad that they're there. I'm glad we feature even in the pictures as YGLs, so I endorse the book. I think for us, if anything, those who will care to read the book, it will help keep our imagination alive for human and societal development. I don't think we're done yet, Arthur. Zimbabwe has great potential, and I believe that our generation will see a better Zimbabwe. I remain very hopeful, particularly with the documentation that you've done. Forward ever, I'll go.
I want to just say that it's a surprising privilege for me to be asked to say a few words about what I think and about maybe also what I also envision about Zimbabwe and all. But I, of course, begin by congratulating Professor Arthur for putting down pen to paper, or is it now, it's no longer PNA cartridge or whatever it is that you now put to paper, to actually document, firstly, very, very important and critical steps in the making, the continuing of the making of our country's history. But also, even more importantly, for speaking out his mind and saying his thoughts clearly and candidly. I find it refreshing that today in 2023, to encounter that we have him saying exactly what he thinks and writing it and not being afraid to say it. I say this because I'm disappointed that personally, as a Zimbabwean citizen, I find a lot of censorship in our society. Thought censorship. I think we're even forgetting to think and are afraid to think. And then even then speaking, and a lot of it I must say is self-censorship. There's a fear, this is my experience, there's a fear somewhere out there. Walk into maybe even any office, whether a government office, a council office, talk to somebody who's serving you. Ask them their name, try to do that. I try and get references. People are afraid to speak. And I'm not saying that I'm not blaming them. And so we come from a history that even precedes the independence, where fear and so on are on. But But I think it takes what, I think for me the most important thing that Arthur has done is to say it and to write it. And yeah, so if you don't agree with it, like what was said, I think by Professor, that's up to you, but to say it and to be candid and to be honest and to be frank, because I think we start to die as a nation when we don't speak what we think, and we're also afraid, and sometimes that let's speak and then we see what happens after that. But let's speak and let us speak. And so I'm, it's a very short time that I have to speak, but I will say that I've had the privilege of being able to obtain this big volume. And I have a bias. I am interested. I think a constitution and a constitutional reform fanatic. So I went to, I thoroughly enjoyed, because those are the bits that I chose. I thoroughly enjoyed this account of the way that the 2013 Constitution was written. It took me on a nostalgic journey. It was, a very emotional experience. And what you are doing is really important, because you are creating a because I'm being able to remember the struggles and the difficulties that went through, and even in the privilege that I was in the inclusive government. And so, like you say, you're absolutely right. We must learn from you. We must document. We must write, and we must read. And thank you for doing that. And I'll just say that I will say, and even the shenanigans that went on. I see that is coming through. I just want to go to page 106. That is actually such a very brief thing that I will just quote and read about what's happening now in the reforms to the Constitution that is being reformed before it's even used, and about how I think it's absolutely right to observe that Mugabe and ZANU-PF have always cunning and one step ahead of us, silently take the approach that, well, we will play along, adopt and not implement, and change the Constitution as soon as we get a majority presence in Parliament. So I think it's really also up to us. And thank you, Ivan. I now know what AGI is. I now know what superintelligence is. Thank you.
Really, it's an honor for me to speak right here. Arthur and I have had many discussions. I've had the privilege to have Jackie and Arthur at my home a couple of times where we had dinner together and lots of discussions. And I have to say that I have a lot of respect for your intellect and of course for your frankness. Professor, you talked about Singapore and where do we go wrong? And I think it boils down to our mindset. Some say any society has the leadership that it deserves. And some say leadership, they're just a mirror of who we are. So we take responsibility. I have enjoyed discussions with Arthur because, as he says, it's not only Zimbabwe, but the whole of Africa. And you can even say, all of us black people. Why? All the wealth that we have. We only have a population of what, 15, 16 million people? And as you know, you go to Mumbai, Mumbai is about 21 million people. Delhi is 32 million people, twice the population that we have in this country. And yet we have all these diamonds and platinum and chrome, more than 60 different minerals. We can grow anything in this country. But look at the poverty, look at the conditions of our people. And I'm glad that people like Arthur here are analyzing what our problems are and offering solutions. The solutions are within us. We've always said we look west, where he was educated, we look east, but I think we have to look into ourselves, where the solutions lie. Arthur, thank you so much for what you've done.
Good. Zinoida show exactly where I stand in relation to Arthur and his family's achievements. I think I should say quite clearly that for a person like me, I think I told her what's happening and where Arthur has come from. I have not yet come across any other person whom I can place at the same level as Arthur. Actually, energy, and so forth. Then she assured me, right? They will move to energy. So I had to get that assurance, which the amount of work that he's doing is really amazing. So I really join with you and everyone else in really celebrating these achievements, and my books are everywhere. But what I find also, and I have to say, is that his production levels, it's intimidating. So we can inspire you. And then, and if you look at this, the diverse design and analysis of control systems, thought leadership, maybe this subject matter, the content. And lawyers were coming here, right, to attracted advocates, will pick us a page in ways writing on Constitution of Zimbabwe Amendment number 2, and so forth. And the accuracy that is there is unbelievable. So we don't have people like that. One thing, this is why I'm very close to him. As a lawyer, and don't watch and no problem. So, when you feel the other, it does all that. Go on. Lawyer understands, doesn't feel the man, he knows it. But, so they will stand. So I have a friend in other where there is not even an iota competition of whatever nature. It is a relationship that is built on supporting. Tell me how to inclusive government. I don't know what to do. They try to keep the secrets of government. You read something in the Independent, not children of you, is it true? It is nothing. We are very close friends. I know you don't book my dog. With other neighbors of Tarwell, I always like him at distance. One of my close friends are down, nothing every time, this guy that 10 minutes of finance. They don't want to once. Minutes of finance, once. But I have to taste it every time. So there was that difference. With other, you could talk and you could find out things. You could, he's deputy prime minister, but at the same time, I'm very like others. Now, I'm not going to say, I don't remember things about but I wanted to share that quality here. It's very important. You know what you're doing and so forth. So all I have to contribute now is to say to other JK and family and all friends, here we have a great friend. We'll continue to learn a lot from you. Continue as well with us. Thank you very much.
I'm coming from a generation where I feel totally out of what is going on. I'm 80. And I was surprised that Arthur actually invited me to this. Because our generation has seen our time, and we really are people who should be backbenchers and just see how we grow the young to take things over. During the inclusive government, I just wanted to tell a couple of stories to contextualize that. I was in the EU Parliament, the ACP thing, and we saw the new cabinet, and it was really exciting that we got what we wanted. Then when I arrived back, a police officer rang me from Chaminuka building and said, "Murukudi Wampano," very arrogant. Because Nani, do you want to torture us again? They said, "No, we are in Rudio. And eventually, Chagirai rang me, I went, and we were told that there was going to be an organ for national healing, reconciliation, and reconciliation. There was no integration. But when I was reading your book, this is the story I want to say, Arthur. This volume, you think we can read that in the time you gave us? When you came to form with my team, preparing for something very big, and you found that I don't have time to stretch myself. And so you now expect me to read it. But there are 3 parts which I read, and which I'd like to comment on. Because I said, as my husband and I said to you, we want to actually move forward with yourself and your wife to do some of the projects which will get stronger if we work together. When I first met Arthur, the thing which impressed me about him was his wife. Because to me, I just talked to her for a few minutes. She really was the model first lady for me. She had her own career, she had her own work. She really thought, she had 2 boys, 2 sons. And to her, it was just in step, which is how our mothers were. My mom was a teacher. She was the chair of the National Council of Women. She was the founder of the Radio Homecraft Clubs with Helen Vera, who was doing African Women's Clubs. She had 6 of us, and she never hired a maid. She trained us to actually do. She was exactly like that. And I actually told her that I really think you make the Northern First Lady. And I also admired Arthur for marrying an equal. So the point I'm going to make, Arthur, have no room. In my time as a youth, and Arthur really reminds me of my husband's time as a youth. This year in Australia, we are celebrating the 50th anniversary of Herbert Chitepo's visit to connect with the International Solidarity Movement. And the Tanzanians were like you. They were connecting African liberation movements everywhere because they were mainstreaming the African agenda into the global one by getting Africa free through the OAU and the Liberation Center. Now, the 3 things we were fighting were racism, which was in the apartheid thing, sexism, and class. Now, when I read Arthur's book, I was so disappointed. Sure, no picture of me. No picture of organ. But you know you're as an organ. Chapter 4, Unotiwe, page 62. In pursuit of a healed, reconciled, and integrated nation, peace begins with us all. I was ready. When now I came from Europe, and I was now a minister, the first thing I was invited, excuse me, patron, can you take this? This is my hero. I'll not water in Aswai. Give this to my Sekuru, sitting next to you. Sekuru Maleko. 2, you need to have the history of the country properly balanced. We will only remove Ruvengo when we understand how our totems network us. When I'm here, I just see Vanvaniri Hamanau, and I see my different close relatives, and I'm proud of that. And I'm not going to actually attack any of them, but to talk to them on where we should be going, in a way of respect, of love for the country together, and in a way of fairness to all. Right, Amas?
I'm going to be practical. I went to Arthur in the same office. He was the deputy prime minister, I was the minister in the office. The things that Arthur shares in his books are things that he always talked about. They are not imagining. We need to have a shared vision. Don't do that, Comrade Timber. We go nowhere. These things are not new to me. When we walked into the Mutambara program, I will share a story with you. There was no toilet paper. This is the citadel of power in this country. Mutambara, there was no toilet paper. The government did not have stationery where we could write letters. There were no pens. To me, this was a reflection of total leadership failure, which Arthur, in some way, is talking about in his 3 books that I protect. Later, I had the opportunity to go and see Mr. Mugabe in his Mutambara office, and subsequently his State House. I saw 2 things. First thing that I saw in his Mutambara office was the furniture which Ian Douglas Smith used to use. Then went to the State House, met with him, the so-called blue room. In there was still the same Victorian furniture that he inherited from the Rhodesian government. It said a lot to me. I forgot to mention there was a black and white TV in the Mutambara office. It said a lot to me about the mindset of the leadership that we had in the country. That we had people who intended to transform this country when they themselves were not transformers. You cannot have transformation without transformers. Their vision for this country, my understanding of it then, was that we need to replace the colonial leadership that was running this country by ourselves, which means a change of dramatic personnel, and then keep everything as it was. Africa faces that challenge. Arthur talks about this in his book in a smart way. Arthur is a writer, and he writes directly himself. And I give you again a story where he called, "Comrade Timber, come here. We have a problem." And it was the time that green fuel, the green fuel project was introduced in the country, and someone had come with something similar to SI 635 2023 in terms of what should happen as far as fuel, the blending of fuel in this country is concerned. Someone intended to create a monopoly of one individual company. Okay. Monopoly by legislation, where they would say only this company will be able to. Very sad. This is the kind of leadership that we are dealing with. But Robert Mugabe saw beyond it and said, listen, there's a problem somewhere. And he was smart enough to say, Arthur, please, can you go and fix this thing? And Arthur called me and said, so what do we do? I said, David Prime Minister, we must stop these people from stealing because they want to steal. But at that time, we were supposed to be sitting in a committee with him. But he already had the draft report of that committee. Of what needed to be done. And the good thing about it, that I liked about it, is that Arthur was writing his own reports when he was David Prime Minister, ignoring his own chief of staff to say no. But now, today, I understand why he didn't want his chief of staff to write his reports. Because the same chief of staff today is a minister in this government, embroiled in some house in Borodale, which they asked an institution to go and buy on their behalf. Now I can understand why Arthur was saying, no, I will write my own reports and sign them. But each other minister will be working through the government sector of some sort. Congratulations, Arthur. You have lived up to what makes you as an intellectual. Thank you.
Arthur, just a couple of years ago, Harare Lodge Volume 1 And Arthur was saying, volume 2, volume 3 is coming. I was thinking, but volume 1 died, volume 3 just got in. As Lovemore was saying, Arthur has amazing energy and so forth. So congratulations for the great work in terms of history and recording. We come a long way from Arthur. I haven't checked whether I mean this one or not, but we're there the first and second one. We met in 86, I think, 86. We met at Ambassador Hotel. We had been part of a panel of students. I think it was about Hudson. I was a chaplain in Guero. He was in Mutambara. So we had we're part of a group that had won a national competition for high schools on the future of socialism and whether Zimbabwe should have a one-party state and implement socialism. So Arthur was a winner from Manicaland. I was coming from Midlands. So we shared a room at the Ambassador Hotel. We were roommates. Yeah, I thought 11 years, I was 2 times in the town jet. So for both of us, the first time we got a hotel. So you can imagine. I don't know if we slept the night because it was an ambassador. The following day there was going to be a ceremony in Parliament where we were going to receive our prizes. I don't know if we slept that night, Arthur. But Lovemore talked about being competitive. We talked and argued. A very, very competitive relationship. It's a bit different from the one here at Tower and Lovemore. And that's how we first met. Years back, and eventually we were to become colleagues at University of Zimbabwe. And I haven't read much of the book. I got it on Friday. But Arthur definitely is very determined and can be very loyal. So as the leading socialist at the university at that time, Arthur was the chairperson of the Society for Modern Scientific Thought. I was the general secretary. Monzora, I think I'm and as socialists, we were continuing with the tradition, seeking to push the student movement as the voice of the voiceless, the vanguard. And we ran for SRC elections in 1988, 89. And I remember, unfortunately, for you to become SG, so Arthur ran as the president and won. I was supposed to become the Secretary General. But for you to become Secretary General, you had to be number 1. In direction number 6. So I remember going to my place and so forth, and Gabriel Chaiva, I think was number 2 or so. He was supposed to become so he thought he should become the leader of Zoom. Zoom had just been formed at university. And Arthur then announced a great speech and reminding us of Chitepo's 1973 speech on the land question. And Arthur announced his cabinet, his SRC. I was shocked to hear that I had become the General Secretary. So very loyal friend. And we're working together and so forth.
I think I should start by saying, as you can see, that I'm the youngest here. So when we were growing up, we just used to hear about Arthur Mutambara as a myth. And we're very much so mesmerized by the rock star status of Mutambara, and we are still. I think it's fair to say Arthur Mutambara inspires a generation, and his intellectual prowess is actually admired by many of us. But I know so many people who want to admire Mutambara secretly for whatever reason, be it politically or for an inherent inferiority complex. But the point I want to make is that Zimbabwe must learn to harness its global superstars. At the moment, some members of Zimbabwe's presidium who are actually governing us every day cannot even spell their names under serious pressure. So one great lesson that I learned from Mutambara at an early age was when I was the Zimbabwe National Students Union. And it came through a phone call. I had caused chaos, pandemonium, and disorder in town. And I actually liked it, because I thought we were following in the giant footsteps of Argo. I actually thought that we were being tigers and not cats. Professor Maduku is here, right? Yeah, actually it was Professor Maduku, Trangirai, and Matombo, the then ZCTU president, who had convinced me that the only language that Mugabe understood was the streets. and actually, Maduku was chairing those shenanigan meetings. And I was the youngest then. So we had to make the streets ungovernable until Mugabe gave in, right? But then I received a phone call from Argo, and he said, Zamchia, I see you have been first in the streets, but are you first in class? He said, as a student leader, as a president, you must be first in class and first in the streets. Then I pretended as if the network was because that semester I had not done so well. We had a duty to make the streets ungovernable until Mugabe came in. And I was accountable also to Maduku. So I'm saying it now because I know they can't arrest Maduku now. It's the Second Republic. The book also partly omits some critical roles of other selves in the pursuit of the Zimbabwean dream. For example, Mutambara writes nothing about Zamchia. Imagine Timber, all the work that I did behind the scenes, the technical work during the GNU. After all, I am Mutambara's Gazaland homeboy. I'm also a fellow PhD graduate from Oxford University. So I thought Mutambara would favor me the same way he was liked by Mugabe. Well, but the point I want to make, a serious point, is that do not be sad when you don't find what you think was your critical role in the book. Because it is an autobiography, an account of the self. So any omissions or suppressions should not take anything away from this seminal book. But it can generate salubrious debate and lead to new research to enrich the world of ideas and solutions. It's an account of the self. So don't be sad when you don't find what you think is your critical role. You can also write one. Congratulations for now, President Mutambara and the First Lady.
Ago, you have interacted with the luminaries of this country, and you have been part of the leadership of this country. I just have one question that amazes me. Do these leaders not know where the rest of the world is going, or they deliberately don't want to go there? It's okay if you don't have an answer for that, but I just should say that. Yeah.
Thank you. Great jersey here, and then just behind you.
Oh, okay. Thank you very much, Professor, and also Dr. My question is that during your time, Professor Mutambara, maybe during your student activism and also your movement, you managed to do a lot in terms of coming up with a new constitution. But currently, as young leaders and also people are coming through the movement, we are facing a lot of challenges that even failed to block the constitutional amendment that you're talking about in your book and also the preview of you. What do you think is the difference between the movements of nowadays and previous days, and what advice can you give us who are also part of who are also trying to check from where you left?
Thank you.
Andrew, just a campaign for President August. I need 20,000 for nomination, please. The question is, what are the three talks of ideas and solutions? Now I'm saying, I haven't read the book, but I'm proposing to Professor Mutambara to initiate some form of workshops, equivalent to what we are doing today, across the third world countries, the global south, where we discuss his ideas and solutions in this book. And people also come with their own ideas and solutions, so we really begin to strategize and implement these things. Thank you.
Okay.
I wanted to just say thank you for the book. I haven't read it, but there's a story that I heard about the fisherless fisherman, where there was this person who was a very good fisherman, and people were curious to know how he used to catch the fish. And at the end of the day, people spent more time asking questions, and nobody ended up catching the fish. So I want to say to Professor, I think we need more coaching, practical things that will get us somewhere, even as Tete was talking about young boys, because now we are having a generation gap. We've empowered the girl child also, and we're being empowered, but we also need the boy child to not be left behind.
Thank you. I was actually going to say that I know Arthur from another different perspective. As my Form 3 student, you know. So it's good to see them rise above us, you know. But my question is, I read the other two books, I haven't read this one. My challenge is that with that diversity of experience and thought, I don't see anywhere where we interlink our leadership and the international community, and what is the relationship there, and how has it affected our thought processes. Thank you.
Thank you. My question or request rather was that I feel as though as young people we've been deprived of the access of having intellectual role models who come and actively share that inspiration as young intellectuals or as young people who are trying to grow in the movement. That's the first thing. And then secondly, how do we reconcile the fact that as a country we're very behind as far as technological advances are concerned, but globally we're now living in a fourth industrial revolution. How do we bridge that gap as Zimbabwe from majority law area to fit into the global fourth industrial revolution? Thank you very much.
Just keep the mic, and just keep the mic. When you say we've been denied the opportunity for role models, who denies you?
Sorry, I think maybe I misspoke. When I say denied, I don't mean an individual is denied. I mean that the way in which the country has been set up right now has meant that there's very little room of mentorship from elder intellectuals to and actually accessing that role towards young people. So I don't mean like an individual denied, but I'm saying the way in which the culture has been set up. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, and thank you very much, Professor Mutambara, for inviting us here. I have a question. I haven't read the book yet, but you talked of having United States of Africa, but my question as a student is, how best do you think that as Africa we can achieve this? Because I think, let's take for example, is Emerson Mnangagwa ready to seize or relinquish power and become the minister? Or is Museveni ready to do the same, to be the Minister of Agriculture, while he's enjoying those privileges of working with bodyguards and so forth? So, the practical way that we can make this dream possible. And number two, I just want you to comment on the current student movement and pinpoint where we are lacking as student leaders, so that it can be rectified and we move forward.
We have seen the death of reading culture in Zimbabwe. I'm a young man, I don't know if it used to be there, the reading culture. So, since there's that death of reading culture, how best can we do it to resuscitate that reading culture? If it ever existed, what should we do to make sure that it is resuscitated? Or if it has never existed, what should we do to create it? Because people are not reading. Yes, we are writing, but people of Zimbabwe do not read. So we have to make sure we bring solution to that. And secondly, Another issue is, we are educated. I don't know if you are educated or illiterate. Probably you can clarify on that. Because world over, it is said Zimbabweans are educated. But when it comes to solutions, we do not have solutions to the problems. Our education doesn't speak for us. We do not have anything to show for that. So, what should be done to synchronize our education with practical solutions that are needed on the ground? Thank you.
This guy, thank you for the remarks, but I must say that I'm very tough on your son, Emerson, in the book. I'm tough on him. Anyway, buy the book. Are they deliberately doing this? Yes and no. Yes, on the arbitrage, for example. You can get rid of that arbitrage, but they won't, because they're benefiting from the arbitrage. From 10,000 US dollars to $2 million US dollars, no work. They have that opportunity. So deliberately, they will not remove arbitrage, because they're beneficiaries of arbitrage. Sometimes no, because of incompetence. Now, there's a very clear distinction between corruption, dictatorship, and incompetence. Please, let's understand the difference. Incompetence, you might mean very well, you might be a pastor, you might be a reverend, but you don't know what you're doing. You're going to destroy the country, even if you pray every night. So there are some people who mean very well, who are good human beings, but are incompetent, and they're destroying the country. So those ones I would say, it's not deliberate, it's just incompetent. They don't know what they're supposed to do. Craft literacy and craft competence is missing. Movements of today, I'll go back to Chitepo, go back to the revolutionaries of the 60s. Do you know what it means to be the only lawyer in the country? The entire country, one black lawyer. The entire country, one black doctor, Barenyatwa. Advocate Eric Batinenga, there were about 20, 30, 40 of you. Chitepo was alone, and he was defending all these crooks and politicians. He could make lots of money. I mean, you call yourself a rock star. Chitepo was a superstar in terms of success because he was the only lawyer in the country. But he decided to sacrifice because his people were in bondage. And he died. Our people now are saying, what is it, what's there for me? My own success. But Renyatwa the same. Medical doctor, the first one. He decides to join the struggle. And what happens? He died. How many of our young people today who are in this struggle are prepared to sacrifice for collective success? That is the difference. The level of commitment, the level of sacrifice that we're prepared to put in there is missing. And the University of Zimbabwe, you can't even address meetings there. Why would you allow Mafumo, is that your vice chancellor? Why do you allow him to stop you from having meetings? I want to come and address you there. But you can't have me there. During our time, Tekero would come, Gomo would come, Dr. Makon would come. Anybody would come to the university when we were in charge. Now you can't even have me to speak because you're afraid of Mafumo. You are cowards. Next time I want to come and speak at the University of Zimbabwe. Otherwise, dissolve the SRS. Ideas and solution workshops, I think that is a good idea, so I won't say much about that. I only am providing one section. There are many other ideas. Let us workshops and share. Yes, practical things we must always execute. Remember in my chart, vision, strategy, execution, execution. Execution is strategy. If you're not doing things, you have no strategy. It's one thing to have a vision, have a strategy, but are you doing something? So I agree with the idea of practical things, examples of execution, and making a difference on the ground. The international relations, this is why we need to make sure that we act as a region, act as a continent. It is very easy for you to be victimized as a small country, but if we are working together and have the same position on the war in Ukraine, the same position on Sudan as Africans, then we are more practical and more effective. We'll be more respected globally if we work as a region, we work as a continent. So it's important that we understand global politics and also the links with the international frameworks. Technology. You know, the traditional thinking is that, well, the fourth industrial revolution is for Europe, it's for Japan and America. We are behind, so we can't take part in that technology. No, there's an opportunity to leapfrog. Look at wireless telephony. When wireless telephone came through, there were no banks in Africa. So when wireless banking, 80% of our people are not banked. So we were able to do wireless telephony into banking. So wireless banking, mobile telephony banking. If you say M-Pesa, for example, if you say EcoCash, there's nothing in Japan that is as good as M-Pesa. There's nothing in Japan, in America, that is as good as EcoCash. Why? Because our lack of development, our lack of infrastructure becomes an opportunity to leapfrog. So when you look at artificial intelligence, artificial general intelligence, when you look at ChatGPT, because of our lack of development, some of these technologies are more useful and more applicable to our environment. So what we're saying is we have an opportunity to leapfrog, to jump, and move into the fourth industrial revolution. The US of Africa, I thought you were giving my speech. You talked about Museveni not being ready. That's what I've said. But anyway, here's the deal. There's no such thing as a free lunch. There's no such thing as a free lunch. If you want to integrate into SADC, integrate into the continent, you must give up on some elements of national sovereignty and embrace regional sovereignty and embrace continental sovereignty. But sometimes we are not serious, Dr. Makoni, about SADC. We're not serious about the AU. Do you know why I see that we're not serious? Have you ever seen a Minister of Finance in Zimbabwe, in South Africa, in Botswana, in Malawi, who says in Parliament, as agreed at SADC, we're going to spend the following. As agreed at the AU, we're going to do the following. As agreed at SADC, we're going to spend some money in that other country. No one does that because we have national budgets, national visions, and national strategies. So we talk regional integration and we talk continental integration, but we operate at the national level. So that's the major challenge, that our visions are national. Our leaders are national. So yes, you are correct, the leaders are not prepared to have one president for the continent. But are you prepared as a citizen? How many of us can say, I'm an African first, a citizen of SADC second, a Zimbabwean third? How many of us can say that? How many of us can say, I'm an African first, a member of ECOWAS second, Nigerian third? Can you even sing the anthem of the AU? Do you? What about this, the anthem of SADC? We are not serious as citizens, we are not serious as leaders. So, but what we must understand, the economies of scale, we stand to benefit more if we work together. Like I showed you, $2.5 trillion GDP, 1.5 billion people, we can benefit, but we need to get student leaders. My advice to you is that please get your freedom back from your vice chancellors. Two, you must do well in class and also in the struggle. Don't just be hooligans who fail and get supplementary exams. In fact, anyone with a sub must not run for public. Reading culture, very important question. We are not stuck with the WhatsApps and the short messages. But we must make sure that we do old-fashioned reading. That's why I was pushing the idea of pictures and videos in addition to text. Because young people want to watch TikTok and want to watch videos. That's why we have videos for activities there and pictures as well, so that we can push the way forward. But thank you very much for this opportunity. Now, this is my last time to speak. Let us take Zimbabwe's issues personally. Don't say to me, I'm a superstar journalist, I'm a superstar lawyer, I'm a superstar professor, I'm a CEO, I don't do politics, I'm a big farmer. You never be respected as a Zimbabwean until Zimbabwe has done well as a country. You never be respected as an African until all Africans are doing well across the world. And I always end on my own personal experience. I used to go to the World Economic Forum, you know, with Bill Clinton and Nigel and bowling out of control. And they'll ask me, who are you? Where are you from? Then I don't tell them, I'm coming out from MIT, I'm a NASA rocket scientist. I said, no. We know all that. Where are you from? I refuse to answer. And continue to describe myself as the rock star. Where are you from? Tell us, brother. Then eventually I say, I'm from Zimbabwe. Ah, come on. You're from Zimbabwe. If you're that smart, how come your country is messed up? If you're that smart, how come you have cholera in Harare? Shame on you, Mutambara. You're no rock star. So you see, my superstar status is decapitated by the bankrupts of my country.
It seemed very ambitious, it seemed impossible, and even I can't believe that we are finally here celebrating the final volume in the trilogy. And I have a confession to make. I haven't actually read the book in the way that you are going to read it. And the reason for that is because I was the editor-in-chief. An editor-in-chief with a very stubborn client. Sometimes you cross things out, so sometimes my changes, my edits could be not approved. So it's a constant tug of war. Mine is to tone down the language. His is to up the ante. So you can imagine the constant back and yes. It's a vast and expansive book. I mean, everything from the GNU to the constitutional reforms, to the AFCFTA, to regional integration, and to current issues of artificial intelligence and ChatGPT. It's expansive, and I think in that there's also a lesson for all of us here, the importance of documentation. So the book was written on an ongoing basis. It's not a retrospective view. It's issues, so there'll be an issue on TV, he'll quickly go to his study, and there's an op-ed coming tomorrow, which you all get on your WhatsApps, no? So the writing is very constant, it's in the moment, and it's as and when things happen, and it's his immediate response to the issues of the day, which is a very interesting way of writing, right? Because I think a lot of people sit down and retrospectively write. So it means also that the feeling is real, he's in the moment, the issues are being captured as they happen. So it's a great book, and I think the lesson for all of us here is to write more and to read more. The young man, I think he's left, he made a very good point, why do we not read more? And there are a number of constraints. Books are expensive, you know, and I think in this current economy and the current situation, it is a luxury. So maybe the first thing is just policy, to say, you know, books need to be free, not necessarily free, but at least to reduce my input duties to make reading accessible to all. Writing is also important, and I think as Africans, we used to boast about having oral tradition. I don't necessarily think it's something to boast about, you know. But along the line, things break down, you know. The accuracy of the information being passed from generation to generation. So I don't think it's anything to be proud of to say Africans, we have an oral tradition. I think when you know better, you do better. So we are all in this room, we are all educated. We know it's important to write, so let's not just rely on oral traditions. Let's all start putting pen to paper to write our stories and our perspectives, you know. Let's all, like Alpha, be witnesses to history as it happens. Thank you very much, and thank you all for coming.
I don't think we can thank Arthur enough for the messages he shared with us, not just in the 3 volumes, in the discussion tonight, and in the many things that he has done and that he continues to do. There are many key messages, some would say key takeaways from this evening. I won't do justice if I try to summarize them. But the first and foremost is we must write. I say this with tongue in cheek because the last time I was here in this position, Arthur said to me, "Vamakoni, you must write." And when I met him this evening before we started, he says, Vamakoni, makatanga ere kunyora. I'm embarrassed, but I'm honest enough to admit it. We must write. It is a shame that Robert Mugabe now lies still and we don't know what was in his head. Some of us know, like Arthur. But there are many, not just in the political space, in the business space, in the academic space, in the humanitarian space. Do we know really what Jairus Jiri thought and what it could do to us today? So we must write. It is important that we work together. I spent 10 years working for SADC, trying to get us to work together. I am embarrassed that where we are today is probably not even where we were in 1994 when I left SADC. Where we were in 1963 when the Organization of African Unity was formed is far ahead of where we are today. So the challenge to the youths of today, and this is a challenge to the youths, not to the gray heads like me, because if you go back to our nationalist struggles, the people who led us were young people. When Robert Mugabe left teaching in Ghana, he was a young person. He wasn't a 70-something. He wasn't an 80-something. When Julius Nyerere left the university in Scotland to go and lead TANU, he was a 30-something. Not even a 50-something. There is something I'm obsessed about, which is not in Arthur's book. And I challenge Arthur and any one of us who wants to share ideas and solutions to look at this. It is our personality. I grew up at a time when what I defined as a Zimbabwean was honest. The Zimbabwean then was hardworking. The Zimbabwean then was compassionate. He felt for others. She felt for others. Today, the Zimbabwean is dishonest. The Zimbabwean is lazy. And the Zimbabwean is cruel and greedy. So our foremost challenge is to restore the personality of the Zimbabwean. Before we can work together, if we are not honest, if we are not hardworking, if we are not compassionate, all these ideas and solutions will remain a pipe dream. It's amazing. Arthur starts by saying, those who have power have no ideas, and those who have ideas have no power. We talk about paradigm shifts. We need to move from the paradigm of power to the paradigm of influence. And there's a lot about influence in this book, and there was a lot about influence in the presentation this evening. We are too much entrenched in the paradigm of power, control, and command. We need to move from that paradigm to the paradigm of influence. But we need the personality that feels for each other, for the union that you're talking about to be realized. So there is the challenge of the next set of ideas and solutions. I am honored, I am privileged to have been here this evening. Those of us who are here are honored and privileged to have been here to hear what Arthur had to share. The least we can do is to propagate this, where we are going, together with the other important takeaways that we shared this evening. But Arthur commands Prof. Zinochwe. Arthur commands Prof. Maduku. Arthur commands Simba Makoni to write. I thank you. Jackie.
Jimmy Magala Kudera Masho, Rodi Wana Musiki, Jonaiga,